This is the Mexico we saw, a destitute country that didn't look unlike the outside of a prison surrounded by a fence, barbed wire, and security. This is the Mexico I remember. I remember the people, the houses, the sounds, and a ranch. I'm only second generation here in the United States. My fraternal and maternal families both come from a small town in the state of Coahuila called Nava. Let me paint you a picture of how we would get there. My father would wake me and my brother up at 4 or 5 in the morning, drag us to the car, and 8 to 10 hours later, we would be in Nava. Knowing that we were only going to one town to visit two sides of my family was always a relief. It meant less time in the car fighting with my brother about whether or not I had crossed over to his side of the seat. We always stayed in my dad's grandmother's house. By American standards, it might represent a shack, but in Mexico, it's practically a mansion. 1 indoor bathroom, a kitchen, 4 bedrooms, and a pretty good-sized living room. A castle for a single family, but throw in 3 other families, and the space becomes quite limited, but love is found in every room. I remember people being so excited to see me, despite the fact that we couldn't communicate. At first, the lack of communication came from my inability to speak, but as I got older, the language barrier was harder to ignore, but with help from my parents, I did my best. I remember it looking like a modern village stuck in the 1920s. I haven't been back since the year 2000, but word on the street is some of the streets are paved, and there's even a gas station in the city limits now. I'm sure it still harbors the same rural feel, but we both have changed, hopefully for the better. I remember the ranch, a place where we rode horses, searched for chicken eggs, played with baby goats, only to see those same goats made into dinner that same day. Gathered around the table, we would eat the goat and watch the sunset together before heading inside to the poorly lit house. Despite the fact that it looked like we had very little, my family was rich with love, support, and faith. The border immersion trip we took in February only reminded me more of how much I miss the place where my family comes from. I miss the river that runs by the house, the sounds of the rooster crowing and cows mooing in the early morning. I miss taking an empty 1-liter glass bottle of Fanta to the small shop down the road and trading it in for a brand new bottle. When I look at myself in the mirror and think about my family, I'm constantly reminded that I'm Mexican. It's hard feeling so connected to my culture, but at the same time, extremely alienated. I love our Mexican traditions, like making tamales and buñuelos at Christmas, or having cascarones at Easter. But I can sometimes hate myself for not knowing Spanish, or not even listening to Spanish music. Missing out on the language is a huge alienation in itself. To me, it feels like the whole base of my culture, and I can't take part in it. Not knowing Spanish sometimes makes me wish the only American part of me was I was lucky enough to be born and raised here. Immigration is a constant hot topic here in the United States, and it's never overlooked by my family. As citizens, my family can tell you we're much better off here in the States. They see the financial stability, but I'm starting to see a cultural emptiness. I worry about myself and my cousins as we stray farther and farther into American culture and farther from our Mexican values. I feel like all I can do now is think back to my Mexico safe haven and hope it will get better in the future.